This is every season by every player in NHL history charted by goals and assists. Simple enough. The shading and obviously the number inside coincide with the number of times that specific season has been achieved. The bright purple, the color the news uses for a hailstorm, is our most frequently occurring total, followed by a darker purple and one more square, then the darkest purple surrounding it, then 4 shades of blue, the lighter the rarer, then bronze, silver, and gold for scoring totals that only occurred 3 times, 2 times, and once, respectively. It forms a comet with a shimmering tail, its intense core splitting out into flecks of gold, some of them so far away from the celestial body you might think they came from some other source. Each fleck of gold, something done by just one man. Many of these flecks are taken up by legends of the game. Many of them are taken up by the rank and file, players unaware they were doing anything special, just going about their business in unconventional ways. The black represents the undiscovered, the unconquered, some of it forever unattainable, some of it right under our noses, continuing to slip through our grasp. This is a video about hockey's explorers, men who have reached peaks no one else would have dared to climb. But it is also a video about those who find peace and meaning in the repetitious and all that lie in between. 5,474. That's the number of individual seasons where a player didn't register a point. No goals, no assists, just skating around. 2 players did their best to individually jack up the chart's highest total, each completing 8 seasons without a point. Dennis Bonvie was a member of the last great generation of face punchers in the dead puck era. A converted defenseman, Bonvie wasn't much of a producer. He wasn't a bum though, especially in the minors, where he could consistently put up about half a point per game, which is especially impressive given the guy once had 522 penalty minutes in a season. In the NHL, Bonvie was mostly just called up to fight specific individuals. Take his sophomore season in 1996, for example, the first year after his move to wing. He only played in 8 games, so I'll run through each of them. Game 1, fight with the legendary Stu Grimson, the Grim Reaper. Game 2, no rematch as Grimson's Red Wings, with Grimson out of the lineup, pulverized Bonvie's Oilers from the outset. Game 3, Bonvie fights Gino Ojic. Game 4, Jeff Odgers. Game 5, Jim McKenzie. Game 6, Ty Domi. Game 7, Sandy McCarthy. And the finale, Game 8, a fight with Tony Twist. That's a who's who of late 90s fighters. Where's Bob Probert, you're saying? Don't worry, Bonvie fought him in the preseason. Most of Bonvie's seasons looked much like this. His only points came in 2002, a goal and 2 assists. His other 8 seasons were without an offensive whisper. This type of player doesn't exist anymore. Your modern, big quotes, enforcers, Reeves, Rempe, Delorier, are all too good to ever put up 8 seasons of nothing. And the moment they aren't that good, they'll be gone. They each play 8-ish minutes per night now, compared to Bonvie, who was around 3. That's simply too much ice time to not do anything. No team is going to play a guy year after year semi-consistently for 3 minutes a night anymore. The game just requires that you have a 4th line that you have some confidence in. Had Bonvie been the only guy with 8 scoreless seasons, I'd have said it would never happen again. But then, post-lockout, a guy did it. Mike Blunden was really not a bad player. He was a fine stopper and could produce a tiny bit, mostly at the AHL level. Blunden was who was called up when a guy on your 4th line got hurt. You weren't going to call up a prospect or scoring forward to get 8 minutes or whatever, so you called up Mike. He might fight a couple guys, he might not. He'll get in on the forecheck, but most importantly, he isn't going to hurt you. In each of Blunden's 8 seasons without a point, he played a single-digit total of games. When he played more games, he got some points. That wasn't really the case for Bonvie, who had 3 double-digit game seasons where he didn't log a point. All this talk of short seasons, what was the most games a guy played in a year without involving himself in a goal? It's another tie. 61 games by both Tyler Wright and Rydas Ivanens. Wright is similar to what we saw in Bonvie, a fourth liner from the height of the dead puck that rarely hit the ice. Wright honestly didn't fight all that much, he didn't really even have the time. In 1999 with the Penguins, Wright had 15 games where he only received 1 or 2 shifts. Wright's .346 average time on ice was even ballooned by one game where injuries forced him up in the lineup to play over 17 minutes. The weird thing about Wright, he immediately stopped being a bum after his 61 games of nothing. And not in the, oh, he was good in the AHL way. The next season, Wright scored 12 goals. 12! He was then picked by Columbus in the 2000 expansion draft and really got a chance to actually play, even logging a rare scoring season of 19-11, one of only 9 players to ever hit that mark. One of those was Pavel Bure, who did it in the same season as Wright. Just don't ask how many games Pavel Bure played that year. Rydas Ivanen's year without is nearly as strange as Wright's, stranger in some ways, mostly because it was in 2010. Surely it was on a garbage team. No, it was on the 101-point Kings, who had the building blocks of their first cup in place. Anse Kopitar, Dustin Brown, Drew Doughty, Justin Williams, Jonathan Quick. They also had a bunch of weird guys that you don't remember were Kings as close to the cup as they were. Ryan Smith, Alex Frolov, Michael Handzus, Teddy Purcell. And then there are guys where you're like, what are these guys even doing here? Freddie Modine? Jeff Halpern? All these guys. And also Rydas Ivanens. Ivanens in 2010 was playing more minutes than Wright was in 1999. I don't really know. Enforcers hung on for a little while longer than you might remember. They didn't just disappear during the lockout. Colton Orr had 0 points in 54 games in 2014, Eric Bolton the same in 51 in 2012, Cam Jansen, Darryl Powell, Sheldon Brookbank, Zenon Konopka, all playing north of 37 games and scoring 0 points, the last generation of true enforcers. There just isn't a modern comparison to these guys. Curtis McDermott, I guess, now that he's playing wing? Michael Pezzetta? Is he too good? He had 25 games without a point last year. Rempe's too good. Rempe! Alright, enough of our most populous cell, and let's head down to assist land. In 2021, Mike Riley put up 0 goals and 27 assists. He should have gotten 1 more or 1 fewer. 026 and 028 were open. Mike, instead, landed on 027, missing out on a unique score and stepping on the toes of Barry Wilson, a guy who did it with his face smashed in for most of the season. 022 through 025 are all adorned with silver or bronze markers. Most of them are guy did it in the original 6 era, then here comes Frantisek Caberlet to take one of Leafs stalwart Jimmy Thompson's claims to fame. One of. In 1948, a 20-year-old Jimmy Thompson registered a season of 029 for the Cup champion Leafs. He's an underrated piece of the Leafs dynasty years. A piece the Leafs tried to erase. Ted Lindsay and Doug Harvey get a lot of credit for being the spearheads of the original attempt for NHL players to unionize in 1957, which is deserved. Lindsay has his name on the trophy voted on by the players for that reason. But their efforts culminated in 2 votes that would decide the fate of the fledgling association, an attempt to officially create a union. 1 vote in Detroit, and 1 not in Harvey's Montreal, but in Toronto. Efforts there led by the Leafs' newly named captain, Jimmy Thompson. Thompson, as most players were, was a working man in the offseason. He owned a coal and oil company in Toronto. He had employees. he knew both sides of the coin. While Detroit's vote failed, dooming the Union, albeit temporarily, Toronto's vote passed. A strictly moral victory, but one that served as a metaphorical kick to the spheres of Leafs owner and GM Conn Smythe. Smythe was maybe the owner most vehemently against the players unionizing, claiming the association was one of the main 5 reasons his team was unsuccessful in 1957. He saw Thompson's actions as a deep betrayal and went after him. Even as the association remained somewhat informal and not an officially recognized union, Thompson was stripped of his captaincy and no longer allowed to travel with the team, with Smythe alluding that he had pressured his teammates to vote yes. Thompson essentially replied with, I'm sorry if I pressured them out of $100, but I didn't. Smythe attempted to bury Thompson in the minors and kill his career, but the association, as limited as it was, fought to get Thompson traded instead. Sent to the Blackhawks, Jimmy joined Ted Lindsay, who had been similarly exiled by the Detroit Red Wings. It didn't work out for Thompson in the Windy City, and the 31-year-old retired at the end of 1958. Smythe had succeeded in ending Thompson's career. It just took an extra year. While Conn Smythe would want you to forget Jimmy Thompson, the chart will not let us forget just yet. His safety as a gold cell isn't guaranteed. Ask Matt Carl, one column over, whose 139 in 2011 season looked untouchably weird, but just last season Matt Grzelcyk ran him down while setting a career high in points and ice time in what was widely considered one of the worst years of his career. Mike Milbury is one of those unique scores above Carl and Grzelcyk, 134. In case you thought this was just some extremely exclusive club, I don't have much to say about him. I just think it's funny. We see the Grzelcyk-Carl phenomenon again at 4 goals and 49 assists, occupied by both Jeff Norton and Brian Campbell. Norton did it prior to a run from 1995 to 2002 that saw him finish a season with the team he started on just once. For my Penguin contingent, he's how the team got fan favorite Johan Hedberg. There is one more instant of a column being capped by 2 guys, but it's across the goal horizon and way down the assist line. 23-79. First done in 1990 by one of the best passers the game has ever seen, Adam Oates, and then again in 1996 by Wayne Gretzky. This is the only full season of Wayne's career that isn't a unique score. 17 unique totals. From when he came into the league in 1980 to 1992, he did it every single year. Back issues in 1993, but another uni in 1994, lockout in 1995, the Oates tire in 1996, then, while relatively washed by his standards with the Rangers, 3 more unique scores. For Wayne, yes, some of the goal totals did it. If you break 60 goals, so far you're guaranteed a gold cell. So 62, 121, 71, 125, 73, 135, 87, 118, and of course 92, 120 all make up what I would almost call Wayne's cluster if it weren't for one cell owned by someone else. We'll come back to that. Okay, dial back the goals, and sure, the Ranger years blend in a bit. There's some luck he hasn't been nailed on at least one of those. But then you realize Wayne's cluster is even bigger than you thought. It's double the size. 5 more gold cells stretching the whole way back to 40 goals. Then the most isolated of them all, our Pitcairn Island, 52-163. It's the 215-point season. Nobody is close. I think geographically the closest non-Wayne cell is this one, 5395 by Pat LaFontaine, an absolutely ridiculous season, albeit one where he was run down by a guy who had Hodgkin lymphoma mid-season. Again, we'll talk about him soon, I promise. But even Pat, a Hall of Famer, playing with 3 more Hall of Famers, having by far the best season of his life, isn't even in the same galaxy as 52-163. That's Wayne Gretzky. That's why he's the great one. But I hate to tell you, 52-163 isn't my favorite cell. And while we're up here, we might as well head over to it. The only star in Wayne's cluster not made by Wayne himself. My square of choice is 85-114, 1989 by Mario Lemieux. A season not nearly appreciated enough in its time because this season right here did not earn him the Hart Trophy or the Pearson. So Wayne sniped him, you're saying? Yes and no, and definitely not in the way you think. Let me tell you about the greatest heist in NHL history. Wayne Gretzky won the 1989 Hart Trophy while Steve Yzerman took home the Pearson. You're probably thinking, oh, it was this cell that beat Mario. Or maybe this one. Or this one. Or this one. Or at the very least this one. No. It's this one. 31 goals behind Mario. Not points. Same amount of assists. 31 goals. Here's Stevie Y up in LaFontaine land. No shade to him, but he was 20 goals and 24 assists back of Mario. Yzerman, whatever, that was voted on by the players. Pretty often, they have no idea what's going on. If you ask the players right now what goalie they'd want for one game, about half of them would still say Carey Price. I'd imagine this was especially so in the 1980s. I mean, they inexplicably gave Mario the Pearson in 1986, the year Gretzky had 215 points, so we'll call it fair on that front. But the writers, come on, man. Oh, Mario must have had his cadre of stars that were there in 91 and 92, the Cup teams, while Wayne was dragging a carcass of a team in LA. Well, Wayne had Bernie Nichols, an already established 100-point guy who scored 70 goals in 1989, and Luc Robitaille, another already established 100-point guy. Mario had Kevin Stevens, Jaromir Jagr, Ron Francis, Mark Recchi, and Joey Mullen. Wait, no! Those guys all came later. I mean, Kevin Stevens and Mark Recchi played like 20 games. Mario's best running mate was Paul Coffey. Sure, Coffey was a juggernaut, but Mario's wingers? 20-year-old Rob Brown and Bob Airey. But Rob Brown scored 115 points. Yeah, crazy, he suddenly was about half as productive once he was separated from Mario. Bob Airey played 15 seasons in the NHL and scored 20 goals 3 times and racked up more than 50 points once. Even if you're doing the most valuable to his team shtick, the Penguins were a laughingstock before Mario. They were even a laughingstock with Mario for a while. The Kings weren't good by any means pre-Wayne, but they did make the playoffs in 1988 thanks to the pitiful Western Conference. Friend of the channel Josh Yohe of The Athletic wrote an article on this very subject back in 2019 that I'll reference here and link in the description. He lays out 5 main reasons why Wayne got the vote from the writers. Los Angeles being the market that it is. Media relations, aka Wayne was a better schmoozer to the national media than Mario and was actively trying to be famous. The season before, where Wayne was hurt and Mario won the MVP, breaking Gretzky's streak of 8 straight Hart wins. Oh, poor Wayne, he only played 64 games in 1988. Everyone knows it would be impossible for someone to miss that many games and come screaming back to win the scoring race and Hart. The voters were trying to make it up to poor sweet Wayne for his lost season. The English bias, Anglophone Canadians don't always have the best opinion of Francophone Canadians, and vice versa. English-speaking Wayne would always be number one in the hearts of most Canadians outside Quebec. Gretzky infatuation. I'll quote directly from Josh for this part. Have you ever noticed that some hockey writers go out of their way to mention Gretzky at all times, even when it's not relevant or appropriate? I notice it on TV broadcasts also. No one is disputing his incomparable numbers, of course. They are what they are, and they are remarkable. But if statistics are what defined Gretzky's dominance, then how do we explain the respective statistics of these players during this particular season? Gretzky worship is a thing in some media circles, and I suspect it especially was during that time. He was the king of hockey, and I would suggest that many didn't want to see him dethroned for a few years longer. Numbers be damned. When I read the newspapers from the time, everyone is saying, oh, well, Gretzky really sold a lot of tickets. Man, who gives a shit? If it makes you feel any better, this season, 69-91 by Mario in 1993, featured him leaving mid-year for cancer treatment, missing 24 games and coming barreling out of the gate when he returned to run down our friend Pat LaFontaine and snag the Art Ross and Hart. 1993 had 84 games. Had Mario played all 84 at his same pace, how many points would he have scored? 224. 224. Our projected season would be 97-127. The record in goals, the record in points. The best season of all time. Mario's 1993 was the best season of all time. Oh, 2 extra games, 4 extra games if you look back to Wayne in the 80s. Purely conjecture based on scoring rates, you can't really think it was the best season ever. Well, that's right. I know it's the best season ever. Wayne's 2 best seasons are 82 and 86, so we'll take a look at both of them and stack them up. Okay, so in 82, Wayne had 92 goals, 120 assists, and 212 points, while the scoring rate was 4.01 goals per game. In 86, he had 52 goals, 163 assists, and 215 points, while the scoring rate was 3.97 goals per game. Now let's crank those down to 1993 levels, 3.63 goals per game. There is one more wrinkle to give Wayne a fair shake, so normalized for 84 games instead of the 80 that Wayne played in those seasons, we get 87, 114, 202 for 1982, and 50, 156, 207 for 1986. That would give Mario a 10-goal, 17-point buffer, meaning that even if you think he couldn't have kept up his scoring pace through the 24 games he missed, he would have only needed a .75 goal per game and a 1.96 point per game pace to have the best season of all time. Both marks he was obliterating at 1.15 goals per game and 2.67 points per game. Oh, and did I mention he came back from cancer? Because he came back from cancer. Mario had the best season of all time and was the best player of all time. Enough of the soapbox. Let's talk about an interesting phenomenon I noticed in doing this. Players care a lot about milestones, especially when it comes to goals. 29 goals, 235 players. 30 goals, 265. Coincidence, maybe, sure. 39 goals, 73 players. 40 goals, 116 players. That's significantly more stark and starkly more significant. 49 goals, 14 players. 50 goals, the classic huge milestone: 39 players. From a few more at 30, to half again more at 40, to nearly 3 times more at 50. We have shot totals for 13 of the 14 49 goal scorers. These guys collectively averaged about 3.4 shots per game in their respective seasons. If you take just the final game of each of those seasons, they average 5.5 shots per game. 2 shots of pressing for 50 goals. These guys wanted 50 goals. Any of them that told you otherwise would have been lying. Our earliest 49 goal scorer that we have shots for is Espo in 1969. He only took 4 shots in the season's final game, but he scored 2 goals, setting the record at the time for goals by a center, so he probably didn't care all that much about 50. Steve Shutt definitely cared in 1978. He put 16 shots on net across his last 2 games. Following game 80, Shutt was clearly disappointed. They just kept giving me the puck and I just kept shooting until I was so tired I couldn't shoot anymore. Most recently, Artemi Panarin was hunting 50 in 2024. We have shot attempts for him. 7 on goal, 18 attempts in his final game. Oh, you think the difference between 49 and 50 is stark and the guys are obviously pressing for it? 59 goals, 2 players. 60? 8. 4 times the guys. Pavel Bure is one of the 2 and also 2 of the 8. Hey, Steve Shutt again. The 69 and 70 goal mark does end our phenomenon though, with 4 69 goal scoring seasons and 3 70 goal scoring seasons. Much like we had Bure showing up twice around 60, we have Mario showing up 3 times around 70. While we're in the goal scoring region, some of you may have noticed this cell on its own way to the right. That's the absolutely psychotic MVP 1991 season by Brett Hull, 86-45. That cell is complemented by its opposite, 25-90, from the same season by fellow Blue Adam Oates. Oates was nearly as impressive, putting up his numbers in just 61 games. That year, Oates had 17 games without an assist. He had 16 games with 3 or more assists. That season was the start of 4 straight unique scores for Oates and was Hull's second of 5 straight. In case you thought they were entirely reliant on each other, Oates was traded during the 1992 season to Boston. In return, the Blues got similarly dazzling playmaker, albeit one with not quite as much talent as Oates, in Craig Janney and defenseman Stefan Quintal. Beside Hull in 1993, Janney put up a unique score of his own with 24-82, which is cool and all, but Oates went berserk. He put up 45-97, bordering the Gretzky cluster, and he finished a whopping 4th in Hart voting because it was 1993, baby. Mario had the best season ever, Doug Gilmour drugged the Leafs kicking and screaming into contention, and Pat LaFontaine being right here as we already pointed out. I would argue that Oates' 97 assists are much more impressive than LaFontaine's 95, as Pat was with 76 goal-scoring Alex McGillney and Dave Andrechuk, who put up 29 goals in 52 games, while Oates had 2 30-goal scorers in Joe Juneau, who would never again score 20 goals, and Dmitry Kvartanov, who played 1 full season in the NHL before ditching for Switzerland. The next year, Oates had some help, at least for 49 games. While Oates put up a 32-80 unique score, his line mate put up one of his own. In just 49 games, Cam Neely scored 50 goals and added 24 assists. A truly incredible, injury-riddled season that put Cam firmly in the weird season category. Cam isn't actually all that isolated in the weird region. In fact, there's a doubly occupied space right above him. Originally, it was solely occupied by Rocket Richard's legendary 50-50 season, 50-23 in 1945. Wait, he didn't win the Hart that year? They gave it to Elmer Locke, his teammate who had 80 points? I mean, that's cool and all, but it wasn't the first 80-point season or anything. That was by Herb Cain the year before, who didn't even get a Hart vote. What? He set the all-time record in points. His record wouldn't be broken until 1951 by Gordie Howe with 86 points, mind you, in 70 games instead of 49. And he didn't win the Hart either? What the hell was going on back then? Okay. I can't relitigate every Hart win, so anyway, Danny Gare stomped on Richard's season. There, happy? Ovi is a few cells north, proving this isn't just an old-time hockey phenomenon, appearing again just one Mike Gartner away at 48-19. But once you get down to 10 assists with goal totals in the 30s, that's old-time hockey range. Basically untouchable scores by Howie Morenz, Cy Denny, Newsy Lalonde, Babe Dye, and with the square least likely to ever be hit again, yes, even including the Wayne cluster, Phantom Joe Malone. These players came before the secondary assists, so realistically, it would be nearly impossible to run these guys down in the modern era. Joe Malone posted a 44-4 during the NHL's inaugural season in 1917-18. Crucially, the forward pass was entirely illegal in that season, meaning Cy Denny's seemingly paltry 10 assists actually led the league. Even just a year later, the forward pass started to rear its ugly head, finally being allowed in the neutral zone, starting to increase the assists of 20s stars like Lalonde and Babe Dye. By the time Dave Staples was watching Howie Morenz play in 1930, the league had fully legalized the forward pass in all three zones. But back in 1918, Joe Malone had no wimpy forward pass to deal with. He just skated with the damn puck like a real man. Is there any footage of this? No, man, it was 1918. It was World War I. Are the newspaper articles from the time particularly informative? Not really. The writers aren't exactly painting a picture with their words, I gotta say. This was truthfully a different sport. But have we even gotten close to Phantom ever since then? We've had a couple swings that at least got us in Howie Morenz range. Bill Collins went 29-9 in 1970, definitely a guy I knew existed. 1977, Wayne Biachin went 28-6, scoring more than a third of his career goals that year. 1986, we finally had a really good swing. Friend of the channel, Wendell Clark, went 34-11 as a teenager. A truly one-of-a-kind player that finally separates us from the mainland. With the 1995 lockout came opportunity for weirdness. Ray Shepard, one of those early 90s guys that makes you go, he had how many goals? Scored 30-10 across 43 games in 1995. But the king of the, are you kidding me? This guy had like half a goal per game category was really chasing the Phantom in 1995, going 34-9, joining Wendell and a bunch of guys from the Gilded Age. Peter Bondra was a very, very good player. From when he entered the league in 1991 to the lockout in 2004, Bondra was 5th in goals. Going down that list, You have to get to number 13 to find someone not in the Hall of Fame, Keith Tkachuk, who, come on, he's going in, even if he has to wait to go in with his kids. Number 16 on the list isn't in, Theo Fleury. He should be, but he'd have had to have been voted in before he made a Twitter. Number 18 is the first guy where you're truly like, yeah, okay, he's not a Hall of Famer, Tony Amonte. Bondra didn't get a superstar teammate until his Caps added, holy shit, it's Adam Oates again. But Bondra's 34-9, which won him the 1995 Rocket, well, it would have if the award existed, but you know what I mean, and 52-28 in 1996 were with Joe Juneau and Michael Pivonka, two guys with career point totals in the 500s. Coincidentally, as is Bondra's goal total. The whole Jágr Caps era, combined with Oates being nearly 40 and Bondra's own age, fizzled the Slovak star's productivity near the end of his career. But did you know he was on the last year pre-Kane and Taves Blackhawks? That's pretty neat, huh? Should Bondra be in the Hall of Fame? Yeah, no. He's a guy that really got nailed by the work stoppages. The best year of his career, where he was on pace for 70 goals in the beginning of the dead puck era, was cut in half. If he's a 70 goal scorer on top of his achievements, and he tacks on another 20 in the 2005 lost season, that puts him a little over 550 goals, and that's tough to deny. If he has that 70 goal season as a crown jewel, that puts him right there with an Alex McGillney who finally just got in. But a 70 goal season isn't necessarily a free pass to the Hall of Fame, as proven by someone we touched on earlier. In 1989, alongside errant Hart winner Wayne Gretzky, Bernie Nicholls racked up 70 and 80. It's an undeniable Hall of Fame season. Everyone around here is a Hall of Famer. There's only a handful of players in the league's history that have an 80-plus assist season and aren't in the Hall of Fame or clearly headed there. Pete Mahovlich in 75, Kent Nilsson in 81, who maybe could have made the Hall had he come to North America sooner and stuck around longer, and Craig Janney in 93 make up our retirees. Then we have one modern player in Jonathan Huberdeau, thanks to the season that destroyed the Calgary Flames in 2022, where he put up 30-85 with the Panthers, never again achieving those heights. But I digress. Everyone with a 70-goal season is in the Hall, which is a group of just Nicholls and 7 more guys. Lemieux, Hall, Gretzky, Curry, Esposito, Solani, and McGillney. Only 2 guys with 60-goal seasons aren't in or going in. Reggie Leach in 1976, who was a member of the best line in the league, the Flyers' LCB line beside Bobby Clark and Bill Barber, and Dennis Marouk, who popped off with an incredible season for the truly horrific Capitals in 1982. Now, Nicholls did play with Wayne Gretzky. Actually, not that much at even strength. Mostly he centered Dave Taylor and Luc Robitaille, which does mean when I said earlier about Wayne playing with Nicholls and Robitaille making his 1989 season less impressive, not an entirely honest comparison. These 3 mostly played together on special teams. So I've run into some cognitive dissonance here. Well, this information makes Bernie's 150 points more impressive, but it also makes Wayne's unearned MVP more impressive. But, okay. So, if we're saying Bernie's 150 was, in fact, impressive, does it reset to Wayne being overrated that season? Bernie wasn't a 100-point guy who upgraded to a 150-point guy by playing on Wayne's line. He was closer to a 120-point guy, maybe, theoretically, that played on the power play and penalty kill with Wayne and got up to 150 points. Not the same, but still, my comparisons between Mario and Wayne from earlier aren't completely destroyed by Bernie, as he is better than Lemieux's power play assistant, Dan Quinn. Anyway, sorry for the digression, but, yeah. Bernie Nichols. Right. I don't know what to say about him. I truly have no idea how good he was. Do you take the 150-point season at face value? You really can't. There's just too much other good player noise going on. Take away the 150-point season, yeah, sure, not a Hall of Famer. But you take away anyone's best season and their case will be a lot weaker. Shocking, I know. Take Pat LaFontaine, for example. Take away his 148-point 1993, he's under 1,000 points. 865 points in 781 games maybe gets him in. Yeah, probably still. But what about Pierre Turgeon? Take away his 132 in 1993. McGillney's 76 goals and 127 points in 1993. Daniel Alfredson's 103 points in 2006. Bernie should be right there. He's Pierre Turgeon at least, I think. Now with the Hall of Famers coming up in the immediate future, Bernie has no chance. And he's at the very least third in line among the, you know what, maybe crew, right behind Rod Brindamore and Keith Tkachuk, and about even with Vincent Damphousse. My thought is not that Bernie should definitely be in, but I think he should be at the front of the overlooked line. I think he's as good as Tkachuk and Brindamore, yet nobody is advocating for the guy that scored 70 goals and 80 assists. I'm trying to do at least a little advocating for the guy. Alright, we've talked a lot about occupied spots, but to wrap things up, we're headed to untouched ground. How do we get unique scoring seasons, and where will the next one come? So far, if you score 56 or more goals, you've been guaranteed to get a unique score. Now it is getting more crowded up there, but likely, for at least this season, if a player eclipses 56 goals, they'll have achieved a unique score. The same goes for 89 assists, a similarly sparse region for the elite. Scoring 15 or more goals than assists, you have a real shot, unless you're Brandon Peary, who went 22-2 in 2015, but landed on Cy Denony's space from 1924. There are some weird empty patches that shouldn't be too hard to hit. They just haven't, particularly on 57 assists. 29 through 34 goals and 57 assists has never been done. For that matter, neither has 33 or 34 and 56 or 33 and 55. I feel like Nick Backstrom should have done one of those, but no. Guess he only scored 30 goals once. Huh. Which is the easiest one to get though? Well, theoretically, 8 goals, 0 assists requires the fewest points, but it seems extremely unlikely. Eric Nystrom was the most recent 7 goals and 0 assists season in 2016, but past 7 goals, we need to get up to Normie Himes' 10 goals and 0 assists from 1929. 8 goals and 1 assist though? 4 guys just in the Cap era. Jeff Cowan in 2006, William Carrier in 2019, Joel Kiviranta in 2023, and Mark Gatcomb just last season. It's just very hard to be the kind of guy that scores goals / sticks around long enough to score 8 of them, but also entirely avoid assists. But 8-0 is probably still a better bet than 12-1, which is the first open cell in that row. Assists seem harder because you need to get to 26 without accidentally scoring at least once. These are kind of freak seasons. What about a normal season? Where is a cell completely surrounded by fairly populous cells? There are a few. 7 goals, 41 assists, 18 goals, 46 assists, 33-25, 34-39, 37-41, 38-45, and 39-39. Those seem like our most reasonable shots to get checked this year, all enclaved by a decent amount of seasons. I'd say 741 is probably the most likely, while 3939 is almost definitely the least likely due to our aforementioned milestone phenomenon. Does this mean anything? John Boyes, who I would never rip off, I'm insulted to think you would even say that, states clearly in his Scorigami series that no, unique NFL scores don't matter. That is where I would disagree. We attribute meaning. We decide what means something and what doesn't. For example, if you finish at the top of the English Premier League in points at the end of the regular season, you're the champion. It's the biggest thing you can accomplish in the league. If you do the exact same thing in the NHL, you win the President's Trophy and nobody gives a shit. Who won the President's Trophy last year? Right, the Jets. What about the year before that? Or the year before that? One of those is the Bruins, I think. It's all about the meaning we attribute to things. So if you want unique scores to mean something, if a bunch of you want unique scores to mean something, they do. In his book Serious Face, Essays, New York Times Magazine writer John Mooallem speaks with B.J. Miller, a triple amputee turned hospice and palliative care doctor, about his outlook on life and one of his patients, Randy Sloan, who was dying from terminal cancer. Dr. Miller talks about helping people find meaning in what they can as their life reaches an end. Sometimes that's changing goals. Maybe instead of sticking around to see a theoretical grandchild be born, it's instead staying for a loved one's birthday 2 weeks from now. Building meaning out of things that previously wouldn't have had much. Finding fulfillment in the small. As Dr. Miller's patient Randy Sloan was living his last few weeks, he set up a TV, his video game console, and even his souvenirs and posters in his room at the palliative care house he had moved to. Randy spent the end of his life goofing off, going to restaurants, drinking beers with his friends. He told Dr. Miller that his goal was just to live one more normal day. Randy got that wish. He made meaning in the things that we so often take for granted. His last days weren't a pointless wait for death. They meant something because he made them mean something. We aren't always able to do something that means a lot in this world. There are many things that I personally would love to achieve but haven't. Often that makes me feel like a failure for not having achieved them already. I feel like a fool when I waste a day of my life just playing guitar and making music no one will think too much about, or playing video games with my friends with no real tangible purpose. But that isn't a helpful idea. Many people wake up each day and can't be what society would deem as productive. Maybe they're sick. Maybe they're struggling with their mental health. Maybe they just can't. Doesn't matter why. That doesn't make each moment of that person's life any less valuable than someone who is productive. That doesn't mean that that person's life doesn't have meaning. If you're stuck, buried in the same frustration, feeling pointless, know that things have meaning because we give them meaning. Playing guitar has meaning for me because it makes me happy. Playing video games with my friends has meaning for me because it makes me happy. There is no empirical outside force that determines whether someone's life is worth living. No matter how small, no matter how inconsequential something might seem, find meaning and purpose in it. Find hope for the future in the littlest moments that would normally go by without a second glance. Things have meaning because we give them meaning. If something means something to you, it has meaning. My little chart here is silly, and I don't think many would put much significance on it. But it represents an idea. I care about it. Maybe you care about it. Therefore, it means something. Find the chart of every NHL season in your life. Maybe it's going for a walk, talking to a friend, or just making it through. Your life will always have meaning because we decide what has meaning and what doesn't.